It's also Co-operative Fortnight this couple of weeks, and it's just worth reflecting about the scale of the global cooperative sector from the efforts just down there in Rochdale, just about 12 miles away, just over 150 years ago. Last year was the United Nations International Year of Cooperatives. We talked about over 1 billion members worldwide and about how cooperatives had improved the lives of over half of humanity. It's just worth parking that when you actually think about this agenda of a neoliberal, managerialist approach and what one of the great academics of the cooperative sector referred to 15 years ago as the supremacy of the investor-owned model of enterprise. That's interestingly being challenged now as a direct result of the global financial crisis that we've seen in recent years. And one thing that I always remind people of, it's quite remarkable that when we see the state of the global economy, one of the most protracted recessions we've seen for over a century, directly caused by that neoliberal agenda, yet the same solutions are the only things that we're being offered for education, for health and other parts of the public sector. How cooperatives have proved to be more resilient at times of crisis than many other conventional forms of enterprise. It points specifically to the model of governance and democratic control by member stakeholders, and also about the characteristic methods of capital accumulation. It's saying there is something in the cooperative model, there's something about actual democratic ownership rather than orthodox shareholder ownership that actually made cooperative models far more resilient. When we look at alternative models in education and challenging the assumptions that only this managerialist approach can actually transform education, that we also have a very rich history and a very rich history of challenging that orthodoxy from the state. And no greater examples, I think, than from Robert Owen. His emphasis that we shouldn't waste too much time on books, but we should emphasise dancing, games and social activity. And I think one of the other pieces is when we actually have this narrow utilitarian view of education, that it is just about the economy and producing widgets for the economy of the future. Owen, who was running New Lanark, absolutely giant mills, wasn't interested in better mill workers, he wanted better citizens, hence the institution for the formation of character. So let me quickly have a look at the crisis and how it's impacting on education. How that's led to the development of a cooperative alternative, and some of the characteristics, the democratic characteristics of cooperative schools, and how these factors are driving the growth of a very fast-growing new cooperative sector. And I think this is where you see a dogma, and although it's fashionable to blame Michael Gove for everything, and I don't want to jump out of the queue for that one, I think it's really important to see this as a long-term trend that I think in many ways started with local management of schools, nearly 30 years ago. And there are a whole series of steps. And one of the pieces that I think is worth reflecting on when you actually see that aggregation of marketisation of education towards privatisation of our schooling system is how much of it comes from ministers and how much of it comes from deep in new sanctuary buildings. I think as part of that managerial culture, we've got this piece that everyone here is familiar with about the critical importance to the government of creating a culture of failure and crisis in our education system. And how many days have to come by before another report comes out at a time when our schools have never performed more highly, that actually find something to find a critique of and this idea of failure. You need to create that in order to have the space for the radical right solution. Where the money for free schools was going, where that investment was going, it's actually using public money to create competition for schools, competition for places. Alongside free schools, which is the flagship policy, we have university technology colleges, we have studio schools, as well as the rapidly growing academy chains. And in terms of new entrants, one of the most predatory new entrants into this these days is the FE sector, that suddenly see them facing competition in terms of the way the legislation has made them very, very similar to private sector providers. So they suddenly start saying, well, we should be running schools. There's one FE college in the north that said it wants to set up initially a chain of 12 schools in a city that's already got free schools, UTCs, and was already carrying forward surplus places as a result of a good BSF scheme. There aren't any more kids in that city, so all you're doing is with public money creating the space for failure, because a market has to have that space, but a completely artificial market. We've given you a contract to run that academy and achieve certain standards, and if you don't, we'll take it off you and give it to you. That is what Michael Gove thinks is accountability. Accountability to stakeholders, accountability to communities is completely non-existent. I actually started saying about what I think everybody was expecting, which is beyond the next election, Mr. Gove would like to see the academy changed and able to run schools on a for-profit basis. And an absolute line in the sand that we thought was there in terms of our education system crossed, and the scale of that privatisation and marketisation agenda comes through. That, though, has also created the space for an alternative, where people, and I've been really impressed, and I know Bernadette's with us, I think we'll confirm this later on. What has really shocked us is the passion of many, many head teachers who say, I haven't spent my lifetime in education to see my community's school handed over to a for-profit chain. I think one of the real interesting drivers of this is people passionate to see schools safeguarded for their communities. The government didn't realise that in keeping the 2006 Education Inspections Act on the statute book, the model we generally use of foundation schools puts these schools in the same category as VA and VC schools, in the same category of schools as the Roman Catholics, the Church of England, etc. And foundation schools do give some degrees of protection that other models don't. This is, again, a critical alternative about whether you believe that sustainable change in schools, changing aspirations in communities, is best built by collaboration, by working with, or being run by, whether it's by coercion or whether it's by cooperation. Absolute stark alternatives. It gives you a guiding set of values and principles and underpinning characteristics, but can be customised to local circumstances. We look over at Leeds, where I think that by the end of the year we'll probably have 50% of the schools in Leeds in cooperative trusts. The inclusive vision that we saw that the local authority was disappearing. We wanted to use self-help, and we wanted to benefit all the young people in the communities we serve. Not just those where you could make a quick profit, not the mechanisms of how quick can we move the exclusions through so that we can move up the league tables, but serving the whole of the community. Just under 500 schools completed all the legal processes in trust. As of yesterday, 188 at various stages of consultation, plus converter academies. I think we're on target to be around 700 schools by the end of the year. I would be shocked if there wasn't 1,000 schools that had adopted the model, despite all the legal complexities, by the end of next year. 90% of primary schools haven't made a decision on their status yet. Right? This is serious stuff. We can have a serious alternative in this marketised system. Over 2,000 schools cooperatives running with government support in Malaysia. But look at what they're saying about the importance of these pieces. To develop thriftiness and independence, to instill democratic characteristics and elements in the younger generation. They see it as essential for democracy. To encourage cooperation and teamwork, to build leadership and ability amongst the younger generation. So they're seeing, as part of a government strategy, the importance of introducing people to cooperative to develop the skills for a better society. And if you look just over the water to France, where they have a huge network with 4.5 million people in cooperatives. Look at what they see as their objectives about learning with others, by others, for others, not on your own, against others. I can't think of anything that completely turns upside down the Govian philosophy than that. And that also say that they see the principles and values of cooperation are essential for a well-functioning social economy. Interestingly, OCCE are massively supported by the Ministry of Education in France, even when you had regimes like the Sarkozy regime in there. It is seen as absolutely part of their characteristic. When bodies like the EU are saying that cooperatives take a long-term approach and anchor them in the local economy, I'm going to love using that one to defend the foundation schools model. To say what communities are saying is that set of values are right for our community for generations to come. We know that education is important for our communities. We see that localised agenda is critical. I do actually have pressure from the Cabinet Office about how can we take cooperative models into the further and higher education sectors. There are contradictions around. We need to learn to exploit them to make sure that the future's more cooperative. The challenge going forward, just to finish, how we challenge that dominant narrative and ideology and make clear there is a cooperative alternative. I think it's a really interesting challenge, as what we do is help set up autonomous, independent cooperative structures. How do you get the same economic efficiencies from 1,000 autonomous cooperatives as you can from a top-down command and control chain at a time when resources are squeezed? That's a really interesting challenge. And how do we actually build that democratic alternative across the whole sector as the pressure on universities, the pressure on FE colleges towards corporatisation grows as well? And the reason that I love opportunities like this is help us build the evidence base. One of the frightening pieces, I did a session in Cardiff last week where the Wales government's getting really interested in these models about the international experience. But there isn't any literature out there. We know there's cooperative schools in Spain, in Portugal, they've been operating for decades, but there's no literature out there. We desperately need to build a greater research basis, because with that, we can interrupt the right, we can make sure there is a cooperative alternative.